The elegant sounds of clinking glasses and quiet conversations filled the air at Bellini's, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Hidden behind the kitchen doors, Lily Chen took a deep breath and straightened her black uniform. Her fingers, once accustomed to dancing across piano keys, now balanced trays of overpriced meals for people who made more money in an hour than she did in a month. "Table 7 needs water refills," called out Miguel, the head waiter. "And 22 just got seated. It's another business lunch." "Looks important." Lily nodded, quickly filling crystal glasses with ice water. At 26, she wasn't where she had planned to be. 4 years at Juilliard, graduating at the top of her class in piano performance, and now her most appreciative audience was the kitchen staff when she hummed while prepping silverware. Life had a way of derailing even the most carefully orchestrated plans. 2 years ago, just as she was about to start her career performing with a prestigious chamber orchestra, her little brother Andy had been diagnosed with a rare kidney disease. Their parents had passed away years earlier, leaving Lily as his only family and support system. The medical bills piled up faster than concert opportunities, and soon her dreams were packed away like her sheet music, still loved but unused. "You look tired," said Rosa, an older waitress who had taken Lily under her wing. "Did you stay up late again?" Lily smiled weakly. "Hospital visiting hours end at 9, but there was paperwork for Andy's new treatment. Then I practiced for an hour. I still try to keep my fingers nimble, you know? Just in case." Rosa squeezed her shoulder. "One day, honey. One day everyone will hear what you can do." Lily appreciated the encouragement but had grown used to keeping her musical background private. People treated her differently when they knew, either with pity or with expectations she couldn't fulfill while working 60-hour weeks. "Your section's filling up," Rosa warned. "And Mr. Wallace is here again," Lily groaned internally. Wallace was a regular, a mid-level finance guy who thought his modest wealth entitled him to special treatment, and who always found reasons to touch her hand when she delivered his drink. "I'll handle him," Lily said, grabbing her notepad. "But if he asks about my exotic background one more time, I might accidentally spill his soup." Rosa chuckled. "I'll have napkins ready." The lunch rush at Bellini's was like a symphony of its own, predictable movements, crescendos of activity, and the occasional unexpected solo when someone complained or made special requests. Lily moved through it with practiced efficiency, her mind often drifting to music as she worked. She'd mentally play Bach while reciting the daily specials, or work through difficult passages of Liszt while entering orders into the system. Near the center of the restaurant stood a gorgeous Steinway grand piano. On weekend evenings, Bellini's hired musicians to play soft background music that the patrons largely ignored. During weekday lunches, the piano sat silent and untouched, a beautiful prop that added to the atmosphere but served no real purpose, not unlike Lily's musical talents these days. She sometimes looked at it longingly during quiet moments, imagining how it would feel to sit on the bench, to press those keys, to make music again in front of people instead of alone in her tiny apartment, on the electronic keyboard she'd bought secondhand. But such thoughts were distractions she couldn't afford. Andy's treatment had entered a new phase, more expensive than the last, and daydreaming wouldn't pay those bills. "Lily, you've got a new table," Miguel called out. "The private area near the window." She followed his gaze to a group being seated at one of Bellini's most coveted spots, a semi-private alcove with a view of Central Park. Even from a distance, she could tell these weren't ordinary customers. Their suits probably cost more than her monthly rent, and they carried themselves with the easy confidence of people who had never worried about money. "Who are they?" she asked, straightening her uniform again. "The guy in the center is Nicholas Park," Miguel whispered, a note of awe in his voice. "The tech billionaire, founded Park Place Software and just sold it for billions. The others are probably his executive team. The manager says to give them whatever they want. They're celebrating some huge deal." Lily nodded, mentally preparing herself. These high-profile tables could go one of two ways. They'd either be surprisingly pleasant or unbearably demanding. Either way, they usually tipped well, and every dollar counted in her careful budget. As she approached, she noticed Nicholas Park was younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s, with casual confidence and a smile that seemed both charming and calculating. He was telling a story that had the whole table laughing, gesturing with his hands in a way that commanded attention. "Good afternoon," Lily greeted them with her practiced smile, Welcome to Bellini's. My name is Lily, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with something to drink? Nicholas Park looked up at her, his eyes assessing in a way that made her slightly uncomfortable. Not in the creepy way that Wallace did, but as if he was solving a puzzle. Well, Lily, he said, his voice carrying the slight accent of someone who grew up speaking Mandarin before English. We're celebrating today. Bring us your best champagne. 4 bottles should do it. One of the women at the table raised an eyebrow. 4 bottles for lunch, Nick? Some of us have afternoon meetings. He waved his hand dismissively. Cancel them. Today is historic. As of this morning, we are all significantly wealthier people. That deserves proper celebration. Lily wrote down the champagne order, mentally calculating the bill. 4 bottles of Bellini's finest would run well over $2,000 more than she made in 2 weeks. Of course, sir. I'll bring that right away. Would you like to hear about our specials while you look at the menus? For the next hour, Lily served the table with professional efficiency. Nicholas Park ordered lavishly, encouraging everyone to try multiple dishes. They were celebrating the sale of his company to a larger tech giant, a deal worth billions that had apparently just been finalized that morning. The group grew increasingly loud and celebratory as the champagne flowed. During a quiet moment while the table was enjoying their main courses, Lily found herself standing near the piano, straightening items at the service station. From behind her, a voice spoke, "Do you play?" She turned to find Nicholas Park watching her. She hadn't noticed him leave the table. "Excuse me," she asked, though she'd heard him perfectly well. He nodded toward the piano. "You keep looking at it. I wondered if you play." Lily felt a flush creeping up her neck. Had her longing glances been that obvious? "I used to," she answered simply, not wanting to elaborate, "but not anymore." He pressed, leaning against the service station with casual interest. "Not professionally," she said. Life had other plans. Something in her tone must have discouraged further questions because he merely nodded, his eyes still evaluating her in that unsettling way. "Life often does have other plans," he agreed. "But sometimes life also has surprising twists." With that cryptic comment, he returned to his table, rejoining the laughter and conversation. Lily watched him go, an odd feeling settling in her stomach. There was something unpredictable about him that made her uneasy. By the time they ordered dessert, the group had consumed 3 of the 4 champagne bottles, and their volume had increased considerably. A few other patrons had cast annoyed glances their way, but no one would dare complain about Nicholas Park and his party, not when he was known for dropping tens of thousands of dollars in a single meal. Lily was clearing some plates when she heard him call out, "Miss, our wonderful waitress." She turned, professional smile firmly in place. "Yes, sir. Can I get you something else?" Nicholas Park's eyes had the slight glaze of someone who'd had too much champagne, but his gaze remained sharp and focused. He smiled, and something in that smile sent a warning signal through Lily's mind. "I've been wondering," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "why such a fine establishment keeps that beautiful piano but doesn't provide entertainment during lunch." The restaurant manager, who had been hovering nearby to ensure the VIPs were happy, stepped forward. "We have pianists on weekend evenings, Mr. Park. Would you like me to arrange for someone to come in? It would take about an hour, but for you," Nicholas Park waved him off. "No need. I think we already have our entertainment right here." He pointed directly at Lily, his smile widening into something that made her stomach knot. "Our waitress is going to play for us." The manager looked confused. The table of executives watched with amused interest, and Lily felt her heart begin to race, unsure if this was really happening. "I'm working, sir," she said quietly, "and the piano is for professional musicians hired by the restaurant." "I'll give you $100 tip," Nicholas Park countered, pulling out his wallet and placing a crisp bill on the table. "Just one song. Consider it part of the service." The manager stepped closer to Lily, speaking in a low voice. "Mr. Park is an extremely valuable client. If you know how to play even a little, it would be appreciated." Lily felt trapped. She needed this job desperately. Andy's next treatment was scheduled for the following week, and the insurance only covered part of it. But to be put on display like this as part of some rich man's entertainment? She looked at the piano, sitting there in silent invitation. It had been so long since she'd played on a proper grand. Her fingers suddenly itched to touch those keys, to release all the music that had been building up inside her with nowhere to go. Nicholas Park was watching her with interest, clearly enjoying her discomfort. Was this some kind of game to him? Did wealthy people get bored enough that embarrassing service workers became a form of entertainment? Well, he prompted, it's just a simple request. Unless, of course, you can't actually play. There was a challenge in his voice, a slight mocking tone that lit something inside Lily. 2 years of putting her dreams aside, of working until her feet ached and her hands were chapped from hot water and cleaning solutions. 2 years of being invisible and useful and nothing more. Perhaps it was time to be seen again. One song, she agreed, her voice steadier than she expected. The manager looked relieved, moving to take her serving tray. Nicholas Park looked surprised, then pleased, as if he'd gotten exactly what he wanted but hadn't expected it to be so easy. Lily walked to the piano, aware that conversations throughout the restaurant had quieted. People were watching, curious about the unexpected lunchtime entertainment. She felt a moment of panic. It had been so long since she'd performed for anyone except her brother during hospital visits. But as she sat on the bench and adjusted it to the right height, a strange calm settled over her. This was where she belonged. Whatever game Nicholas Park was playing, whatever embarrassment he hoped to cause, he had inadvertently given her a gift. Her hands hovered over the keys as she took a deep breath. The restaurant waited. As Lily's fingers touched the keys, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the feeling of smooth ivory beneath her fingertips bring back memories of concert halls and standing ovations. Then, without overthinking it, she began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor floated through the air, gentle and questioning at first, like a conversation just beginning. Lily's touch was delicate but confident, each note precisely where it needed to be. The piece started simply enough that someone with basic training might manage the opening, but anyone who knew music would recognize the complexity that was coming. At the executive table, Nicholas Park's smirk began to fade. He had expected fumbling, perhaps a clumsy rendition of Chopsticks or a simple tune learned in childhood piano lessons. What he was hearing instead was unmistakably professional. His eyes narrowed as he watched the waitress transform before him, her posture changing, her face softening into an expression of pure focus. "Did you know she could actually play?" whispered Diane, his chief financial officer. Nicholas shook his head slightly, his eyes never leaving Lily. "No, this is unexpected." Around the restaurant, conversations had completely stopped. Forks were set down, phones forgotten mid-text. Even the kitchen staff had paused, peering through the service doors to see what was happening. The manager stood frozen, his mouth slightly open as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. As the piece progressed, Lily's hands moved faster, the music building in intensity. The ballade was a piece she had performed countless times, one that lived in her muscle memory even after 2 years away from serious practice. It told a story of its own, beginning in quiet reflection, growing through struggle and conflict, soaring with hope, and descending into passionate complexity. A busboy dropped a glass somewhere in the back, the crash barely noticeable over the music. No one turned to look. All eyes were on Lily, who remained lost in the performance, unaware of the stir she was creating. Her body swayed slightly with the rhythm, her face expressing every emotion that flowed through the music. Nicholas Park felt something uncomfortable settle in his chest. What had begun as a thoughtless prank, a way to amuse himself and his colleagues by putting a service worker in an awkward position, had turned into something entirely different. The $100 bill on the table now seemed insulting, almost laughably inadequate for what they were witnessing. "Who is she?" he asked no one in particular, his voice barely audible over the music. The restaurant manager had edged closer to their table. I had no idea," he stammered. "She's been here about 2 years. Quiet, hardworking, never mentioned anything about playing piano professionally." The music was building toward its technically demanding conclusion. Lily's fingers flew across the keys and runs that spanned the keyboard, her timing impeccable, her expression intense. For those few minutes, she wasn't a waitress in a black uniform with sensible shoes. She was an artist, a performer, sharing something profoundly beautiful with a room full of strangers who had suddenly become an audience. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Lily sat still, her hands resting on the keys, eyes closed as if reluctant to break the spell. Then someone at a corner table began to applaud. Others joined in, and within seconds the entire restaurant erupted in applause and exclamations of astonishment. Lily opened her eyes, suddenly remembering where she was. Color flooded her cheeks as she took in the scene. Customers standing from their tables, the kitchen staff clapping enthusiastically, even the usually stern-faced manager appearing moved. Her gaze finally settled on Nicholas Park's table, where the executives were applauding with genuine appreciation, all except Park himself. He sat motionless, his expression unreadable, eyes locked on hers. Embarrassed by the attention, Lily stood and gave a small, awkward bow before attempting to return to her duties. But the manager intercepted her, grasping her hand. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "We've been paying outside musicians when we had a Juilliard graduate serving tables?" Murmurs spread through the restaurant at this revelation. Lily winced, wishing he hadn't mentioned her background. She tried to move past him, but he continued, clearly seeing an opportunity. "Ladies and gentlemen, what a special treat today. It seems our own Lily Chen is a classically trained pianist from Juilliard. Let's show our appreciation once more." Another round of applause followed, more enthusiastic than before. Lily felt her face burning. This wasn't how she had imagined returning to performance, in a waitress uniform, put on the spot as part of some wealthy man's idea of lunchtime entertainment. "May I return to my tables now?" she asked the manager quietly. "People are waiting for their checks." He nodded, suddenly remembering that she was, in fact, still on duty. Of course, but we should talk later about possibilities." Lily made her way back to the service station, aware of the stares following her. Regular customers who had barely noticed her existence before now smiled and nodded as she passed. A few reached out to touch her arm or shoulder, offering compliments she acknowledged with polite thanks. When she reached Nicholas Park's table, the atmosphere had changed. The boisterous celebration had subdued into something more thoughtful. Park himself stood as she approached, something he hadn't done when she'd served them earlier. "Your check, sir," she said professionally, placing the leather folder on the table. She kept her voice steady, determined not to show how his prank had affected her. He took the folder but didn't open it. "That was Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor," he said. Not a question, but a statement. Lily nodded, surprised he could identify the piece. "One of the most technically challenging pieces in the piano repertoire," he continued, "not something one plays casually." "You studied at Juilliard?" "Yes," she replied simply, not offering more. "And now you're here, serving overpriced wine to people like me." His tone wasn't mocking anymore, but genuinely curious. "Why?" Lily met his gaze directly. "Life happens, Mr. Park. Sometimes we make choices based on what matters most, not what we want most." Something in her words seemed to strike him. He nodded slowly, then opened the check folder. Without looking at the total, he placed his credit card inside and handed it back to her. "I'd like to speak with you before we leave, if that's possible." She took the folder, her expression carefully neutral. "I'll process your payment and return shortly." As she walked away, Diane leaned toward Nicholas. "What are you thinking, Nick? That look on your face usually means trouble for someone." He shook his head slightly. "Not trouble. Something else entirely." He watched Lily moving efficiently between tables, collecting payments, bringing coffee to other customers. "Did you see what just happened?" She completely transformed, like watching someone step into their true self. "She's obviously talented," Diane agreed. "But why the interest? You're not typically moved by classical music." Nicholas drummed his fingers on the table. "My mother was a piano teacher before she married my father and moved to America. I grew up with that music, even if I never had the patience to master it myself." He paused. "But it's not just the music. It's the incongruity. Someone with that level of training and talent serving lunch instead of performing. There's a story there." When Lily returned with his card and receipt, Nicholas signed with a flourish, folding the customer copy and tucking it into his pocket without looking at it. "Thank you for an exceptional lunch experience," he said formally. "I apologize for putting you on the spot earlier. It was thoughtless." Lily blinked, surprised by the sincere apology. "Thank you, sir. I hope you enjoyed your meal." "More than I expected to," he replied with a small smile. "But before we go, would you mind telling me why someone with your obvious talent is working here instead of performing?" Lily hesitated. She normally deflected personal questions from customers, maintaining the professional boundary that made her job bearable. But something in Nicholas Park's expression had changed, the arrogance replaced by genuine curiosity. "My younger brother has a rare kidney condition," she found herself explaining. "After our parents passed away, I'm all he has. The medical bills, well, they don't wait for artistic careers to take off. This job has steady income and health insurance." Nicholas nodded slowly, processing this information. "How serious is his condition?" "Serious enough," Lily replied. "He needs specialized treatment that our insurance only partially covers. But he's strong, and the doctors are optimistic." "I see." Nicholas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, offering it to her. "My foundation does work with medical research and assistance programs. Perhaps we could help?" Lily looked at the card skeptically. "That's very kind, but we're managing." "I'm sure you are," he said. "But sometimes accepting help isn't admitting defeat, it's just good strategy." He placed the card on the table when she didn't take it. "Think about it. My direct number's on there." With that, he rejoined his colleagues, who were gathering their belongings to leave. Lily watched them go, noticing how other patrons tracked their exit. Conversations buzzing about both the billionaire's presence and the unexpected musical performance. "Well, that was something," Rosa said, appearing at her side. "Never seen anything like it in all my years here." "You've been holding out on us, honey?" Lily smiled weakly. "It wasn't intentional. It just never came up." "The manager's in a state," Rosa continued, nodding toward where he stood, animatedly talking on his phone. "I think he's calling the owner. Wouldn't be surprised if they offer you a different position here." "I don't need a different position," Lily said firmly. "I need this job with its predictable hours and health insurance." Rosa patted her arm sympathetically. "Just saying, things might change after today." "Oh, and you'd better check that table. Rich folks sometimes forget the tip when they're distracted." Lily returned to clear Nicholas Park's table, mentally preparing for the possibility that her impromptu performance had cost her a decent tip from the large bill. She began gathering glasses when she noticed something tucked under a dessert plate, the customer copy of the receipt. Curious, she picked it up and unfolded it. Her eyes widened. On the tip line, Nicholas Park had written a number that made her breath catch. Below it, in a precise handwriting, he had added, "First installment of your return to music. Call me." Lily stared at the amount, unable to believe it was real. That number would cover Andy's treatments for months. It was more money than she would make in half a year of serving tables. She sank into a chair, the receipt trembling in her hand. As the reality of what had just happened began to sink in, Lily sat in the uncomfortable chair beside Andy's hospital bed, watching her brother sleep. The steady beep of monitors provided a rhythmic background to her thoughts, which kept circling back to the events at Bellini's 3 days ago. She still hadn't called the number on Nicholas Park's business card, despite turning it over in her hands countless times. The tip, if you could even call such an enormous sum a tip, was safely deposited in her account. She'd taken a photo of the receipt before cashing it, half convinced the bank would tell her it was some kind of joke. But they hadn't. The money was real, and it had already paid for Andy's next 3 treatments. "You're thinking too loud," Andy mumbled, his eyes still closed. "I can hear the gears turning from here." Lily smiled, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from his forehead. At 19, her brother still had the same cowlick he'd had as a child. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." Andy opened his eyes, still groggy from his medication. "You didn't tell me how work went the other day. You said something weird happened?" Lily hesitated. She hadn't shared the full story with Andy, not wanting him to worry about her. He already carried enough guilt about her abandoned music career, despite her constant reassurances that her choices were her own. "I played the piano at the restaurant," she said simply. Andy's eyebrows shot up. "Really? They let you play that fancy grand they've got? Cool, did people like it?" "They seem to," she said, understating the reaction dramatically. "One customer left a very generous tip." "How generous?" Andy asked, suddenly more alert. Lily picked at a loose thread on her jeans. "Generous enough to cover your next few treatments." Andy's eyes widened. "What, are you serious? How much did they—" "A lot," Lily cut him off. "And they left a business card. Apparently, they have a foundation that might be able to help with your medical expenses." "And?" Andy prompted. "Did you call them?" Lily sighed. Not yet. Why not? Andy struggled to sit up, wincing slightly with the effort. This sounds like exactly the kind of break we've been waiting for. It's complicated, Lily replied. The customer is Nicholas Park, the tech billionaire. Andy's voice rose with excitement. The one who sold his company for like billions? And he heard you play? That's insane. He didn't just hear me play, Lily admitted. He kind of forced me to play. As a joke, Andy's expression darkened. What do you mean? Lily explained what had happened. The celebratory lunch, Park's challenge, the unexpected performance, and his apparent change of heart afterward. As she spoke, she realized how strange the entire situation sounded. So he tried to humiliate you, but it backfired because you're amazing, and then he felt bad and gave you a huge tip and offered to help, Andy summarized. That seemed weird, but also kind of awesome. It's definitely weird, Lily agreed. I don't know what his angle is. People like that don't just hand out money without expecting something in return. Maybe he was genuinely impressed, Andy suggested. Or maybe he feels guilty for being a jerk. Either way, what's the harm in calling? The worst that happens is you don't like what he has to say and you hang up. Lily knew her brother had a point. Pride was a luxury she couldn't really afford right now. I'll think about it, she promised. Think fast, Andy advised. Opportunities like this don't come around often. And it's not just about the money, Lil. You played again. In front of people. That's huge. Lily felt a small pang in her chest. It had felt good, better than good. For those few minutes at the piano, everything else had fallen away. The worry about bills, the exhaustion from double shifts, the constant fear about Andy's health. All of it had disappeared while she played. I'll call tomorrow, she decided. After my shift? Andy smiled, settling back against his pillows. Good, now tell me what you played. Was it one of those scary, difficult pieces you used to practice until your fingers nearly fell off? Chopin's Ballad No. 1, she confirmed with a small smile. The stormy one, Andy nodded. Perfect choice for putting a rich jerk in his place. The next evening, after a shift that seemed to drag on forever, with several customers asking if she was the piano player from the other day, Lily finally gathered her courage. She sat on the fire escape outside her small apartment, the sounds of the city creating a familiar backdrop as she dialed the number on Nicholas Park's card. She expected to get an assistant or a receptionist. Instead, Park himself answered on the second ring. Nicholas Park speaking. Lily nearly hung up from sheer surprise. Oh, hello. This is Lily Chen, from Bellini's restaurant. You left your card a few days ago. There was a brief pause, and she wondered if he even remembered. But then his voice came through, sounding genuinely pleased. Ms. Chen, I was beginning to think you weren't going to call. I almost didn't, she admitted, then bit her lip. That was probably too honest, but Park just laughed. Fair enough. I imagine you had your doubts about my motives. Something like that, she agreed. The tip was excessive. I'm not sure what you're expecting in return. Nothing, he said simply. It was my way of apologizing for putting you in an uncomfortable position. And perhaps my way of acknowledging exceptional talent when I see it. Lily remained silent, still suspicious. But that's not why I gave you my card, he continued. As I mentioned, my foundation does work with medical assistance programs. Your situation with your brother sounds like something we might be able to help with. And why would you do that? Lily asked. You don't know me or my brother. Let's just say I've been on the other side of medical bills before, Park replied, his tone shifting slightly. Before I made my fortune, my mother had cancer. We couldn't afford the treatments she needed. By the time we found a program that could help, it was too late. The raw honesty in his voice caught Lily off guard. It wasn't what she expected from a billionaire tech mogul. I'm sorry about your mother, she said quietly. It was a long time ago, he replied. But it's the reason my foundation prioritizes medical assistance. Now about your brother. Would you be willing to meet with our program director to discuss options? No obligations, just a conversation. Lily took a deep breath. I'd be willing to talk, yes. Excellent. How about tomorrow? I can have my driver pick you up after your shift. I don't work tomorrow, Lily said, but I could meet somewhere in the afternoon. Even better. There's a cafe near our foundation offices, the Bluebird on 42nd. Would 2 p.m. work for you? They agreed on the time, and Lily hung up feeling strangely lighter. Whatever Park's motivations, the conversation had seemed genuine. Maybe Andy was right. This could be the break they needed. The Bluebird Cafe was more upscale than Lily had expected, with large windows overlooking a small park and sleek modern furnishings. She arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in the nicest outfit she owned, a simple blue dress she'd worn to graduation, and was directed to a table in the corner where a woman was already seated. The woman stood as Lily approached, offering her hand. "Ms. Chen? I'm Dr. Catherine Walsh, Medical Director for the Park Foundation. It's a pleasure to meet you." Dr. Walsh was older than Lily had expected, perhaps in her 60s with silver hair cut in a stylish bob and kind eyes behind fashionable glasses. She had the calm confidence of someone who had been doing her job for decades and genuinely enjoyed it. "Thank you for meeting with me," Lily said, shaking her hand. "Is Mr. Park joining us?" "Nick had an unexpected meeting," Dr. Walsh explained, "but he briefed me on your situation. A brother with a rare kidney condition, expensive treatments only partially covered by insurance, and you as his primary caregiver. Is that accurate?" Lily nodded, surprised by how directly the doctor approached the subject. "Good. Now, I'll need more specific information about your brother's diagnosis and treatment plan. But first, let me explain what our foundation can offer." Over the next hour, Dr. Walsh outlined a program that seemed almost too good to be true. The Park Foundation had partnerships with several specialized medical facilities and a fund specifically for cases like Andy's. They could potentially cover all the costs that insurance didn't, provide access to experimental treatments if needed, and even arrange for home care. "This sounds incredible," Lily said cautiously. "But I still don't understand why the foundation would select us." "There must be thousands of people in similar situations," Dr. Walsh smiled. "There are, and we help as many as we can. But sometimes Nick takes a personal interest in specific cases. It's his money, after all." "Because I played the piano," Lily said flatly. "That seems like an arbitrary reason to help someone." "Perhaps," Dr. Walsh acknowledged. "But if you're concerned about favoritism, don't be. Your brother's case qualifies for our program regardless of how we found out about it." She passed a folder across the table. "These are the details of what we're offering, along with the paperwork to apply formally. Take it home, review it, discuss it with your brother. If you decide to proceed, everything you need is in there." Lily took the folder, still not entirely convinced. "And what exactly does Mr. Park want from me in return?" Dr. Walsh's expression softened. "That's a fair question. Nick told me you were direct." She leaned forward slightly. "The foundation's help comes with no strings attached. However, Nick did mention something about a music program we've been developing for patients. Apparently, you're quite talented." "I used to be," Lily corrected. "I haven't seriously practiced in 2 years." "Well, if you're interested, we've been looking for someone to help coordinate music therapy sessions at our affiliated hospitals. It would be a paid position, completely separate from your brother's medical assistance, but there's absolutely no obligation to accept." Lily sat back, processing this information. A job in music? Working with patients? It sounded almost perfect. Too perfect. "I'd need to think about it," she said finally. "Both the medical assistance and the job offer." "Of course," Dr. Walsh smiled. "Take all the time you need. My contact information is in the folder." As they said their goodbyes, Dr. Walsh added one last thing. "Nick also mentioned you were at Juilliard. My husband teaches cello there. Small world, isn't it?" Lily nodded, wondering just how much Nicholas Park had looked into her background. The idea should have made her uncomfortable, but instead, she felt a strange sense of validation. He had taken her seriously enough to learn about her, to see her as more than just a waitress who could play piano. As she left the cafe, Lily's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Did the meeting go well? Sorry I couldn't be there. Had to deal with an unexpected situation." NP Lily stopped on the sidewalk, staring at her phone. How had he gotten her number? She hadn't given it to him. Before she could overthink it, she typed back, "Meeting went fine. Still processing the information. How did you get this number?" The reply came quickly. "I'm a tech guy. Getting phone numbers is easy. Too intrusive?" Lily smiled despite herself. "Definitely intrusive, but the foundation seems legitimate." "It is. No pressure, but if you decide to accept our help, I'd like to hear you play again sometime. Properly. On a stage." Lily read the message twice, her heart beating a little faster. The thought of performing again, not in a restaurant as part of a prank, but on a real stage, sent a thrill through her that she hadn't felt in years. She put her phone away without responding and began walking toward the subway, the folder clutched tightly in her hand. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. 2 weeks later, Lily stood in the doorway of Andy's hospital room, watching as the nurse disconnected the last of the monitoring equipment. This moment had seemed so far away for so long that she almost couldn't believe it was happening. "So I'm really going home today?" Andy asked, his voice stronger than it had been in months. The nurse nodded, smiling. "Doctor signed the discharge papers this morning. Your new treatment plan seems to be working wonderfully." Lily felt a tightness in her chest that was part joy, part disbelief. After accepting the Park Foundation's help, things had moved with surprising speed. Andy had been transferred to a specialized clinic, started on a new treatment protocol that wasn't typically covered by insurance, and shown remarkable improvement in just 10 days. "I'll get the wheelchair," the nurse said. Finishing her tasks. "I can walk," Andy protested. "I've been doing laps around the floor for days." "Hospital policy," the nurse replied with the patient tone of someone who'd had this conversation countless times. "Everyone leaves in a wheelchair, even marathon runners." When she left, Andy turned to Lily with a grin. "Did you bring real clothes? If I have to wear this hospital gown one more minute?" Lily held up the backpack she'd brought. "Jeans, your favorite hoodie, and those ridiculous neon sneakers you insist on wearing." "They're not ridiculous. They're stylish," Andy countered, taking the bag eagerly. As he changed behind the privacy curtain, Lily took in the room that had been his home for so many weeks. The cards from his friends were packed up, along with the small collection of books and video games that had helped pass the time. The window was open, letting in a spring breeze that seemed symbolic somehow. Fresh air, a new beginning. "Did you talk to your boss?" Andy called from behind the curtain. "Yesterday," Lily confirmed. "I gave my 2 weeks' notice. How'd he take it?" "Better than I expected." "Apparently they've been having me play piano during the Friday dinner service for the past 2 weeks, and it's been good for business. He offered to keep me on just as a pianist if I wanted." Andy emerged, looking more like himself in regular clothes. "But you're taking the foundation job instead?" Lily nodded. "I start next month. Dr. Walsh wants me to have some time to get you settled at home and to practice before I begin the music therapy program. And they're really letting you use that fancy studio to practice?" Andy asked, sitting on the edge of the bed while they waited for the wheelchair. 3 hours every morning," Lily confirmed. "It's part of the job. I need to be performance ready to demonstrate for the patients." What she didn't mention was that Nicholas Park had arranged something else, an audition with the artistic director of a prestigious chamber music series. "Just to keep your options open," he'd said when he told her about it. "The foundation job is yours regardless, but you might want more someday." The idea both thrilled and terrified her. Could she really return to the performance path she'd abandoned 2 years ago? Did she even want to? The nurse returned with the wheelchair, interrupting her thoughts. "Your chariot awaits, young man." Andy made a show of groaning but sat in the chair willingly enough. As they made their way through the hospital corridors, several staff members stopped to say goodbye. The head physician even came out of a meeting to shake Andy's hand and remind him about his follow-up appointments. "You'd think I was a celebrity," Andy joked as they reached the exit. "You're a success story," the nurse corrected him. "Those don't come along as often as we'd like." Outside, a sleek black car was waiting at the curb. The driver stepped out when he saw them approach. "Ms. Chen." "Mr. Chen, I'm David from the Park Foundation. I'll be taking you home today." Andy raised his eyebrows at Lily. "Fancy," Dr. Walsh insisted, Lily explained, feeling slightly embarrassed by the special treatment. "She wanted to make sure you got home comfortably." Once Andy was settled in the car and the nurse had taken back the wheelchair, David closed the door and turned to Lily. "Mr. Park asked me to give you this." He handed her an envelope. "And to let you know that the apartment has been prepared according to your specifications." "Thank you," Lily said, taking the envelope. Another surprise from Nicholas Park there had been several over the past 2 weeks. The offer to help move their belongings to a ground-floor apartment in a building with an elevator, essential for Andy's recovery. The delivery of groceries the day after she'd mentioned in passing that she hadn't had time to shop. The practice studio access. Each gesture seemed calculated to be helpful without being intrusive, though Lily still found herself wondering about his motives. She joined Andy in the car, tucking the envelope into her bag to open later. "This is way nicer than a taxi," Andy commented, running his hand over the leather seat. "I could get used to this." "Don't," Lily advised. "It's just for today." The drive to their new apartment took nearly 40 minutes through city traffic, but it passed quickly as Andy peppered David with questions about the car, his job, and the foundation. Lily sat quietly, watching the familiar streets pass by and trying to process how much had changed in just 3 weeks. When they arrived at the building, David helped carry Andy's things inside and made sure they were settled before leaving. The apartment was smaller than their old one, but laid out more efficiently, with wide doorways that would accommodate the wheelchair Andy might occasionally need during his recovery. Most of their furniture had already been moved in, arranged according to the plan Lily had provided. "Home sweet home," Andy said, looking around the living room. "It's nice. Weird that it's ours now, but nice." "It's just a rental," Lily reminded him. "Once you're fully recovered, we can think about moving back to—" "No way," Andy interrupted. "This place is way better. It's closer to the hospital for my checkups, closer to your new job, and it even has that coffee shop you like just around the corner." Lily had to admit he was right. The location was perfect, and the building had security and laundry facilities, luxuries their old apartment hadn't offered. "I'm going to check out my room," Andy announced, moving with more energy than he'd shown in months. Alone for a moment, Lily remembered the envelope. She pulled it out and opened it, finding a handwritten note inside. "Lily, I hope Andy's homecoming goes smoothly. There's a piano being delivered tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just something to practice on until the studio space is ready next week. The delivery team will handle everything. No need to reply unless there's a problem. Nicholas." Lily read the note twice, a mix of emotions washing over her. A piano in their apartment? She hadn't had a real piano at home since before her parents died. The electronic keyboard she practiced on was functional, but not the same. How had he known this was exactly what she needed? And why did his every gesture make her feel both grateful and uncertain? "Lily, come see this." Andy called from his bedroom. She tucked the note away and went to find him standing in front of his window. "Look at this view," he said, pointing to the small park across the street. "I can actually see trees from my window instead of just another brick wall." His excitement was contagious, and Lily found herself smiling. "It is pretty nice." "More than nice," Andy corrected. "It's like a fresh start." He turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. "You know, I've felt guilty for a long time. About your career, about all the sacrifices you've made. But maybe this is the universe balancing things out. Maybe good things can happen sometimes, even to us." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. "You never had anything to feel guilty about." "I made my choices, and I'd make them again." "I know," Andy said, "but now you don't have to choose. You can have both. You can take care of me and still play music. That's all I've wanted for you." Lily pulled her brother into a hug, grateful that he was here, that he was getting better, that somehow their luck had finally changed. The next morning, Lily woke to the sound of the doorbell. The piano delivery, right on schedule. 2 men carefully brought in a beautiful upright Yamaha, placing it against the wall in the living room where Lily had indicated there was space. They tuned it, explained the humidity control system, and left her alone with the instrument. She approached it cautiously, almost reverently, running her fingers lightly over the polished wood. This wasn't a loaner or a rental. According to the paperwork, it was hers to keep. Another gesture from Nicholas Park that blurred the line between professional support and something more personal. Taking a deep breath, she sat on the bench and positioned her hands. The keys felt different from the restaurant's grand piano or her old keyboard, firmer, more responsive. She began with simple scales, reacquainting herself with the touch and sound, then moved into a Bach prelude, letting the familiar patterns flow from memory. She was so absorbed in the music that she didn't notice Andy watching from the hallway until she finished the piece. "That sounds amazing," he said, coming into the room. "Different from your keyboard." "Very different," Lily agreed. "It's perfect, actually." Andy sat on the couch, still moving carefully but looking more like himself than he had in months. "So when do you start the actual job?" "With the patients?" 3 weeks, Lily replied. "Dr. Walsh wants me to observe some sessions first, learn the protocols. It's not just about playing, it's about using music therapeutically." "And the audition?" Andy asked. The one you mentioned yesterday? Lily's hands tensed slightly on the keys. 2 weeks from Saturday. I haven't decided if I'm going to do it. Why wouldn't you? It's a perfect opportunity to get back into performing. It's not that simple, Lily said. I haven't performed seriously in 2 years, and the foundation job is already more than I expected. Andy leaned forward. But you miss it, don't you? Real performing? Not just playing in a restaurant or for therapy sessions, but actually being on stage. Lily didn't answer immediately. The truth was complicated. Yes, she missed performing. The connection with an audience, the total immersion in the music, the challenge of communicating something profound through her playing. But she'd also found peace in letting go of the constant pressure, the competition, the relentless drive for perfection that had defined her student years. I don't know, she finally admitted. Part of me wants it, but another part is afraid. Afraid of what? Andy asked. Afraid it won't feel the same. Afraid I'm not good enough anymore. Afraid of wanting something so badly and then losing it again. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down. It was easier when I didn't have a choice. Now that I do, now you have to decide what you really want, Andy finished for her. Lily nodded. And I'm not sure I know anymore. Her phone buzzed with a text. Nicholas Park, studio's ready early. Available tomorrow if you want to try it. Let me know what time works for you. Lily showed the message to Andy, who grinned. He's persistent, I'll give him that. Too persistent, Lily muttered. I still don't understand why he's doing all this. Maybe he just appreciates talent, Andy suggested. Or maybe he's trying to make up for being a jerk that first day. Either way, are you really going to question it? Look at us, I'm getting better. You have a new job, there's a beautiful piano in our living room. Sometimes good things just happen. Maybe, Lily conceded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. In her experience, good things usually came with strings attached. But so far, Nicholas Park had asked for nothing in return for his generosity. She texted back, 10 a.m. tomorrow would work. Thank you. The reply came immediately. Perfect. David will pick you up at 9:30. The acoustics are excellent. Bring whatever music you want to work on. Lily set her phone down and turned back to the piano. Whatever Nicholas Park's reasons, whatever the future held, right now she had her brother home and healing, a beautiful instrument under her fingers, and possibilities opening before her that she hadn't dared to imagine just a month ago. She began to play again, this time choosing the Chopin ballade that had changed everything. As the music filled their new apartment, she realized that Andy was right about one thing. This was indeed a fresh start. And for the first time in years, she was eager to see where it might lead. 6 months had passed since that fateful day at Bellini's. Autumn had given way to winter and then to spring, and with each changing season, Lily's life had transformed in ways she never could have predicted. Tonight, she stood backstage at Henderson Hall, one of the city's most prestigious venues for chamber music. Through a gap in the curtains, she could see the audience filing in, a full house. Her hands were cold despite the warmth of the building, and she rubbed them together, trying to calm the flutter of nerves in her stomach. 5 minutes. Ms. Chen, the stage manager said quietly as he passed. Lily nodded, smoothing the fabric of her simple black concert dress. She'd bought it last week with her first real performance payment. Not extravagant, but elegant and far nicer than anything she'd owned before. Her phone buzzed with a text from Andy. Break a leg. We're in the 3rd row. You're going to be amazing. She smiled, picturing her brother sitting there with Dr. Walsh and some of the staff from the Foundation's music therapy program. In the 6 months she'd been working with them, they had become like a second family. Another text came through. Remember to breathe. You've got this. N.P. Nicholas Park. Even now, after all this time, she wasn't quite sure what to make of him. He'd kept a respectful distance after setting everything in motion, checking in occasionally but never imposing. He'd attended a few of her therapy sessions, watching from the back of the room as she worked with patients. But they'd spoken only briefly on those occasions. Tonight would be different. He was hosting the reception after the concert, and she'd finally have a chance to properly thank him, not just for the financial support, but for believing in her when she'd stopped believing in herself. A gentle knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called. A young girl entered, perhaps 12 years old, clutching a program and looking nervous. Ms. Chen? I'm sorry to bother you before your performance. I'm Hannah. I'm one of your students at Memorial Children's Hospital. Lily's expression softened immediately. Hannah, of course I remember you. You're doing so well with Clementi, the girl beamed. My mom brought me tonight. I've been practicing every day, just like you said. Could you sign my program? I'd be honored, Lily said, genuinely touched. She took the program and pen, signing with a personal note encouraging Hannah to keep playing. Do you still get nervous? Hannah asked, watching Lily's hands trembling slightly as she returned the program. Lily laughed. Terribly nervous. But that's part of it. Caring enough about the music to be afraid of not doing it justice. Hannah nodded solemnly. That's what I'll remember when I have my recital next month. After the girl left, Lily took a deep breath. This was why she'd accepted the foundation job. Why she'd gradually returned to performing. Not for the applause or recognition, but for moments like that. Connections made through music, lives changed in small but meaningful ways. The stage manager reappeared. It's time, Ms. Chen. Walking onto the stage, Lily was momentarily dazzled by the lights. The applause washed over her like a wave as she made her way to the gleaming grand piano at center stage. She bowed, then settled onto the bench, taking a moment to adjust it to the proper height. In the audience, she could just make out Andy's face, beaming with pride. Next to him sat Dr. Walsh and beside her Nicholas Park. His expression unreadable from this distance. Lily placed her hands on the keys and began to play. She had chosen a program that told her story, beginning with Bach, precise and orderly, representing her years of training and discipline, then Schubert with its moments of darkness and light, echoing the struggles and joys of the past few years. After intermission came Debussy, shimmering and colorful, reflecting her work with the children at the hospital. And finally, she would end with Chopin, the very ballade that had changed everything that day at Bellini's. As she played, Lily felt something she hadn't experienced in years, complete freedom. Her fingers moved with confidence born of countless hours of practice, but there was something more. A connection to the music that transcended technique. She wasn't just playing the notes. She was telling her story, inviting the audience to feel what she felt. When the final notes of the ballade faded away, there was a moment of perfect silence before the audience erupted in applause. Lily stood, slightly dizzy with emotion, and bowed. Flowers appeared from somewhere, handed to her by the stage manager. The applause continued as she left the stage, only to be called back for 3 curtain calls. Backstage, she was surrounded by well-wishers, her former professors from Juilliard, colleagues from the foundation, even the manager from Bellini's. Andy pushed through the crowd and wrapped her in a bear hug. That was incredible, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Mom and Dad would have been so proud. Lily felt tears threatening and blinked them back. I wish they could have been here. They were, in a way, Andy said. I could feel them. Dr. Walsh appeared, elegant in a navy dress. Magnificent performance, Lily. The foundation couldn't ask for a better ambassador for our music programs. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Lily replied sincerely. Working with the children has given me a purpose I never expected. It goes both ways, Dr. Walsh assured her. You've transformed our program. The results we're seeing with patient recovery times and emotional well-being are remarkable. The crowd began to thin as people made their way to the reception. Lily was gathering her things when she realized someone was standing quietly by the door. Nicholas Park. Mr. Park, she acknowledged, suddenly feeling shy. I didn't see you there. I didn't want to interrupt, he said, stepping into the room. That was a stunning performance, Ms. Chen. Even better than your impromptu recital at Bellini's. Lily smiled at the memory that now seemed so distant. Well, I was properly dressed this time, and I'd had more than 2 years away from the piano. The talent was always there, he said simply. It just needed the right circumstances to reemerge. There was a brief silence, not uncomfortable, but expectant. I've been meaning to ask you something, Lily said finally. Why did you do it? All of it. The foundation support, the apartment, the piano, the job. You could have just left a normal tip that day and forgotten all about me. Nicholas considered the question, taking his time to answer. Do you know what I remember most about that day at Bellini's? He asked. Lily shook her head. It wasn't your playing, impressive as it was. It was the moment just before, When you decided to sit down at that piano despite being embarrassed, despite being put on the spot. There was something in your face. A kind of quiet courage. He paused. I recognize that look. It's the same one my mother had when she faced her illness. The same one I had when I was starting my company with nothing but an idea and determination. He moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. Success has given me many things, but it's also removed me from the struggles that shaped me. Your situation, caring for your brother, putting your dreams on hold, it reminded me of where I came from, of what really matters. He turned back to face her. So perhaps it was selfish in a way. Helping you reconnected me to something I'd lost touch with. Lily absorbed this, finding it more genuine than she had expected. Still, most people wouldn't have done what you did. Most people have never heard you play Chopin, he replied with a small smile. But there's something else you should know. What's that? The Foundation's music therapy program? It wasn't my idea. It was something Dr. Walsh had been proposing for years. But I never saw the value until that day at Bellini's. You didn't just change your own life when you sat down at that piano. You changed the lives of every patient who's benefited from the program since. Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest at the thought. All those children like Hannah, finding comfort and healing through music, because of a moment that had begun as a wealthy man's thoughtless prank. We should get to the reception, Nicholas said, checking his watch. You're the guest of honor, after all. As they walked together through the quiet hallways of the concert hall, Lily thought about the strange, winding path that had brought her here. From Juilliard graduate to Waitress to Foundation employee to concert pianist, each phase necessary, each challenge shaping her into who she was now. There's something I've been meaning to tell you as well, she said as they neared the reception hall. I've been offered a touring position with the Chamber Music Society next season. It would mean performing in major cities across the country. Nicholas raised his eyebrows. That's a prestigious opportunity. Will you take it? I'm still deciding, Lily replied. I'd have to reduce my hours with the Foundation, but Dr. Walsh thinks we could work something out. And Andy's health is stable now. He's even talking about going back to college in the fall. It sounds like things are coming together for you, Nicholas observed. Lily nodded. They are, and I've realized something important along the way. What's that? That sometimes life's worst moments, like being forced to play piano as part of a rich man's joke, can unexpectedly lead to the best ones. Nicholas laughed, a genuine sound that echoed in the empty corridor. I've learned something too. And what's that, Mr. Park? That I should be more careful about who I try to embarrass in restaurants. They might just end up embarrassing me instead. They reached the doors to the reception, where dozens of people were waiting to congratulate Lily. Before they entered, she stopped and offered her hand to Nicholas. Thank you, she said simply, not just for the help but for seeing something in me that I'd forgotten was there. He shook her hand firmly. The pleasure was mine, Miss Chen. Now go enjoy your moment, you've earned it. As Lily entered the reception to applause and congratulations, she caught sight of Andy across the room, deep in conversation with one of her former professors. He looked healthy, happy, his future bright again. Her own future, once so narrowly defined by necessity, now stretched before her with possibilities she was only beginning to explore. What had begun as a wealthy man's thoughtless prank had become the catalyst for rediscovering her passion, for healing her brother, for touching the lives of countless children through music. Sometimes, Lily reflected as she moved through the crowd of well-wishers, life's most beautiful melodies arose from the most unexpected beginnings. And sometimes, a single moment of courage, like sitting down at a piano when asked, could change everything.